Welcome back to Show and Tell. I'm Billy, and today is Veterans Day, hence red, white, and blue. Later on in this episode, I'm going to share with you a wonderful World War II era photograph of someone in my family who served in the Army. And on this day, I salute her. Today, I'm going to talk to you about two works in progress, no finished objects, no acquisitions, but I have a lot of other news to bring you up to date. So let me get right down to it. Last time I met with you, I was doing a drawing for two of these, which I brought back from Shetland Wool Week. These are patterns to the Bonnie Isle Fair Isle hat, which is featured during Wool Week. Everybody who went, practically, except for me, knit this hat. And the two people who were the winners of the drawing have not contacted me. So if you're Zan Wild or Linda Muljani, please reach out to me. If I don't hear from you by the next episode, I'm going to be forced to select two new winners. So please let me hear from you. Get a hold of me either on Ravelry or Instagram at billietoy, and I'll put that on the screen for you. I mentioned last time that I'm planning the next knit along for this winter. I'd like to get started early December, so you still have time to order some yarn. We're going to be knitting this Spencer, as it's known in Britain, or in our lingo, we would say, I guess, camisole or chemise. Anyway, it is a vintage pattern that I picked up while I was in Scotland. This knit along is going to be yet a little bit different than the previous ones. All my knit alongs are different from most other knit alongs that you'll find in Ravelry or Instagram, because we meet over Zoom, the whole group of us who are all knitting the same thing at the same time. And we're knitting from a vintage pattern, which has its own idiosyncrasies. We're able to help one another with, sometimes the wording is a little different from contemporary patterns. And there are other things that tend to be tricky in vintage patterns. So we build a little community and we support one another, helping one another. Sometimes vintage patterns are a little bit hard to decipher, and the collective genius of all the people who get together on these sometimes helps parse out solutions to some problems. So it's a really fun thing to do. I try and schedule it so that no matter where in the world you are, it'll be at a reasonably convenient time for you. If you're in Australia, that's probably the most difficult to fit in. But we did have somebody last time around, hi Robin, you might be watching, who was able to get up early enough to join us. Anyway, for most of the world, it's going to be at a reasonably convenient time. This time is different though, because there's going to be a prize, and the prize will be a gift certificate to Good Loops Yarn, who are also offering a 15% discount on any of their yarns. You'll receive the discount code once you register. The registration is very simple. There's a Google form. You'll find the link in the show notes below, and I'll put it on the screen, although it won't be clickable from here. I can host up to 100 people in my Zoom account, so please let your friends know. The more people we have, the merrier, and the bigger that prize will be. The yarn I recommend from Good Loops is their Nurturing Fibers sock yarn. It's 100% merino, and it comes in 47 different colors. So no matter what your taste, you should find a color that suits you. It's an undergarment. I'm not sure if it's going to be suitable to wear as a very thin sweater. It might be, depending on what gauge you're getting and maybe the yarn that you use. I intend on knitting mine to be worn under other garments on cold winter days. Even though in New York today it's 64 degrees and they used to tell us never wear white after Labor Day, it's kind of balmy here. And you know, I had to wear red, white, and blue to honor our vets. So I broke the rule. This lovely lady was my stepmother. She passed away in recent years, but during World War II, she served her country with honor as a nurse in the Persian Gulf. She was stationed in one of the most difficult places to be in the desert, with temperatures upwards of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But on this Veterans Day, we salute her. Okay, the sweaters. You'll remember that my friend Helen asked me to finish this sweater that her mother had begun before she developed macular degeneration. Her mom had completed one front panel and the entire back. And I had to figure out what size needle she was using with this yarn. There was plenty of yarn. In fact, there's an entire skein of this Madeline Tosh. It's called Tosh Bulky. The color is tart and it's superwash merino. Lovely to knit with, especially when you're accustomed to knitting on size 2 and 3 needles. It was refreshing to step up to a size 8. Once I figured out what needle size and gauge, I knit the other front. I knit both the sleeves. And then there was this front panel on both sides and this neckband. Those were all knit in separate phases. The bind off here is done in a very decorative way where you're doing these yarn overs. It's not like anything I'd done before, a little interesting. And then you knit 2 stitches together and then you do some yarn overs and pulling it through. It's almost like a chain stitch in crochet, and it makes this decorative loop. I could see that I was running out of yarn. This is the last of the last skein. So I opted, rather than breaking into a new skein for just maybe what's going to be like another yard or less, I opted to just do a regular bind off around the whole back of the neck. And then I picked up the decorative part around here to work towards the front. So I ask you to comment below and tell me if you think that I will have enough yarn to bind off these last couple of stitches, these last few. Don't forget, there's extra yarn involved in pulling that little open work through. There was no chart for this pattern, although I think it could have benefited from having one. The pattern, by the way, is called Alpine, and short sleeves were what the pattern called for, with this fairly deep ribbon, deeper than the ribbing at the waist. It's kind of a cropped design. This is knit exactly to the pattern, except for my little workaround up there. And of course, I have to weave in these ends. So let me know what you think. Am I going to be able to get the last few stitches out, or am I going to have to borrow some from here? The next sweater is one that I'm knitting for my son. I had described in the last episode these welts, and in fact, I did an entire tutorial showing how I created the welts. This is a Stephen West pattern called Majestic Mountain, and it's a pattern that allows you a lot of room for improvisation. So each of these is either a solid color or a marl of 2 different finger weight yarns. I tried to do some of the same combinations in here, changing up my yarn. And almost all of the time I'm using this Lang Super Socks as my main color. It has its own self-striping mashup of colors. So I think that's what's making the whole thing so interesting, that even when I'm just using the main color, I'm getting some kind of variegation. In here, I had purchased a mini for $1 at Rhinebeck. It was one of the few things I bought at Rhinebeck, but I thought this brown color would complement all this foresty green kind of story. But I didn't have enough of it to do that whole, I guess that's the mountain. So I ran some teal colored yarn, which was a leftover from my Harlequin. as is this light blue. And there's also an olive green. Some of it is marled in here with the main color. So those three colors, the olive, this robin's egg blue, and the teal color, were all the colors, all three colors from my Harlequin. Everything in here, with the exception of this brown, is leftovers from other projects. The main color, all that Lang sock yarn, was a mistake. I over ordered for a project I was knitting for my son. So he's going to have a complete set. He's got a balaclava, he's got mittens, and he's got a scarf that will now all coordinate with this sweater. These are great colors for him. His coloring is similar to mine. He's fair skinned, he has blue eyes, auburn hair, not black like mine was. So this is a really good, I hope it's going to be a good fit and a good look for him. Pattern is really interesting. The way these are done, the way you pick up the stitches, you're interested every step of the way because Stephen West keeps changing things up. It's the different shapes that you're doing, and then there are these slip stitches. Down here, the pattern is a split rib motif, and he's got garter stitch that just goes down the side, but it's not straight down. It keeps changing until here. I'm not sure what's going to be happening next, but there's a lot of interesting things. Every 5 or 10 rows, you have to be on your toes and pay attention to what the pattern is calling for. So kind of a fun knit. The only area so far that's been stockinette is in here, not that many rows. This was alternating, not quite garter because it was alternating with knit rows and purl rows. Actually, this is alternating as well, but alternating in a different way than this. So super interesting, and I hope he's going to like it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing some time with me. Please show some love in the comments and introduce yourselves. I feel like a lot of you know me and I know very few of you. So don't be a stranger. Say hi. I'm going to leave you at this point. I'll see you next time. Don't go away though. Stay around for some of the interesting things. I'm going to show you a little bit of the new New York Philharmonic home and some other things just to give you a little insight into how life is in the Big Apple. Recently, I was contacted by Melanie Gall. You might remember her from episode 101. She was going to be in New York and wanted to get together for a quick coffee and a twirl around my neighborhood. So here we are at a local coffee bar with our delicious coffee drinks. One of the great things about New York is how dynamic it is. If I go on vacation for a couple of weeks, I'm always surprised when I come back to find a new restaurant has opened or a new shop has popped up. So I was totally surprised when I discovered that the Food Network is filming right in my neighborhood, and they have this huge storefront. Melanie and I were able to look right into the windows and see them getting ready for their next episode. Union Square is also nearby. And on the day we met, the Green Market was there. It's only there 4 days a week. Only, it's a lot, which must make it very convenient for the Food Network. I know a lot of local restaurants, some of the best restaurants in New York actually shop this Green Market to get super fresh produce, which has come right from farms in and around New York. As you're probably aware, if you're a moviegoer, many films are made right here in Manhattan. I'm not sure if this was a film production or a TV show that's being filmed, but this neighborhood, because it's so picturesque, tends to get a lot of these trucks from time to time. Sex and the City was filmed here. Episodes of Law and Order have been filmed here. I'm not sure what this one is, but I thought that Lucy and Desi might have something to do with I Love Lucy or some show about them, but it turns out that this truck company that leases to the film industry designates the ladies' room and men's rooms as Lucy and Desi. In the last week or so, I had an opportunity to visit a beautiful art gallery in a mansion on the Upper East Side, and this staircase really wowed me. And last weekend was the open house weekend for our brand new David Geffen Hall, the home, or should I say the new home of the New York Philharmonic. The building has somewhat of a checkered past. It's one of the three buildings that stands on Lincoln Center and was originally built as a concert hall for the New York Philharmonic and called Philharmonic Hall. That was back in 1962. But immediately the musicians complained that they couldn't hear each other playing. So in 1976, the auditorium was redesigned to improve the acoustics. Again, it was a failure. They tried again, third time in 1992. Still no success. But as you will hear when I play you some snips from my visit there, the acoustics are now impeccable. Now, mind you, this is my recording on my smartphone. The sound when you're there in person is 100 times better. We sat in several different seats, one of the balconies behind the stage and very close down to the stage and the orchestra to hear how it sounds different in different parts of the auditorium. As long as they were redesigning the auditorium to improve the acoustics, they did a total overhaul of the lobby and all the public spaces. And I just wanted to show you the beautiful wall covering, the draperies with these beautiful spangles, so unusual, the upholstery of the seats in the auditorium, very interesting color choices. See you next time.